I want to start by looking at the lines. So if we count, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this part of the poem has 8 lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 8 and 6 equals 14. And as I said, we would come back to the sonnet. So a poem of 14 lines is a sonnet. But you also need to look at the rhythm. Now, I don't want to do a lot on this, but just for your interest's sake, we go, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Do you see that we've got this pattern of this, which is repeated? There's 1, there's 2, there's 3, there's 4, and there's 5. And that is called iambic pentameter. This is one iamb. That pattern is called an iamb. And if you have 5 of them in a line like this, it is called pentameter. Don't worry about that too much. It's just a regular rhythm. But what I do want you to worry about is something about the sonnet. It came from Italy, and initially it was for love. If I look at the rhyme scheme of this poem, we've got A, B, B, C, C, D, D. The next section, E, E, F, F, G, G. So what are we saying here? That you've got A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, G, G. You can see that these 4 lines go together with the rhyme, so do those, and so do those. So 4 lines are called a quatrain. This is 2, so it's called couplet, and it rhymes, so it's called, quite obviously, a rhyming couplet. Now this is typical of a Shakespearean sonnet, and usually you get one idea introduced, then developed, and some kind of triumphant conclusion. But you also get another kind of sonnet, and that rhyme scheme will go A, B, B, A, B, B, A. And this, as you can see, is an octave because it's 8 lines, and a sestet, which is 6 lines. And it will have a word showing you a change between the octave and the sestet, and this is called the volta. So what makes this poem quite interesting is that it's got the rhyme scheme of a typical Shakespearean sonnet, but the contrast of the octave and the sestet of a Petrarchan sonnet. So the Petrarchan sonnet is the one that has the octave and the sestet, and there's some kind of contrast between the two, very often shown with the word but. So you need to see that Shakespeare's playing with ways of writing a sonnet in this particular sonnet. He starts off with a question. He's talking to the thee, which is the you of the poem, so this person that he wants to describe. And he says, I need a comparison. I'm a poet, after all. Well, I'm the speaker anyway, wants a comparison. Shall I compare your beauty to, what about a summer's day? So he wonders if that comparison would be useful to describe the beauty of this person. And then he starts to answer his own question, and he basically says, no, actually, it's not a good comparison. The first thing he says, thou art, you are, more lovely, you are more beautiful, and you are more temperate. Now, you know from geography, a temperate climate is very balanced. So he's saying to this person, your beauty is more perfect. Well, in fact, is perfect, and a summer's day is not perfect. That a summer's day can be very pleasant, lovely summer's weather, but actually it might not be that. It might not be mild, temperate, and pleasant. Because, he says, you could have rough winds blowing. And this is an unpleasant aspect of summer. And they can shake the darling buds of May. Buds are when the flowers are very little, so they're still closed up. And then you're going to have the rough wind bashing at them. Buds are delicate. They are easily destroyed. And if these winds are very violent, they are going to damage the buds of May. Now, why he uses May is that May is early summer, actually, but spring summer in the Northern Hemisphere. The dates were slightly different when Shakespeare was writing. So he's saying that the young flowers will be damaged by these rough winds. And then he talks about a lease. I'm sure you've heard about this before. You've maybe got a lease on a car or a flat. So you take out a lease, meaning that you agree to pay rental for a fixed period of time. But at the end of that period of time, your lease ends and you give back the car or you give back the flat. And he's saying here, summer's lease has all too short a date. Summer doesn't last. The time that we have good summer weather is very, very short. And then he says there's a further problem. Sometime too hot. So summer can be very, very often be hot, far too hot. Well, we know that. The eye of heaven then, what is the eye of heaven? What is the eye up in the sky? It has to be the sun. So the sun is here personified as having an eye, and it shines too brightly. Then he talks about the gold complexion of the sun. So continuing the personification, the complexion is the skin. And we have this lovely, rich color of the skin of the sun. But the trouble is that can also be hot. But there's a further problem. The gold complexion can be dimmed. If you dim something, you make it darker. Now, what makes the sun darker is when clouds come up. So the problem with a summer's day, when it's really, really hot, you know those big black clouds come up and cover the sun. And then he concludes, every fair, every beautiful person declines, goes away from, loses his or her fairness, his or her beauty. Every beautiful person loses his beauty. Why? Chance or nature's changing course. Either chance, things that happen by accident, or the course of nature. So nature, you know, what's the course of nature? You go from baby to old age. There really isn't much choice. And if you don't change that course, then you're going to get old and you're going to get ugly. All right? A person can be dressed, trimmed in very beautiful clothes. But as you get older, those beautiful clothes are stripped away. So imagine, I don't know, imagine a Christmas tree. And you've trimmed the Christmas tree. You've put beautiful decorations and lights and things on the Christmas tree. And if you untrim the Christmas tree, eventually all it stands there is a tree. In the same way, a beautiful person, the beauty is taken away because of this course of nature through to old age and ugliness. So what have we seen so far? We have two quatrains. We've got AB, AB, CD, CD. What links the two quatrains? One main idea. Shall I compare you to a summer's day? The question and the answer, which is, no, it's not good enough. So not only do we have 2 quatrains, we also have an octave, because it's got one question followed by the answer. The idea of using summer's day as an image for beauty is not a good idea. He explores some of the aspects of a summer's day. Summer's obviously a beautiful season. It has a lovely warm sun. It's got lovely breezes and beautiful flowers, but it's also changeable. Sometimes it's too hot, sometimes it's too windy, sometimes it's too cloudy. The wind can be too rough, and the problem is summer ends. But here he is going to show the difference between the season of summer and the beauty of the person that he wants to describe. So we're following here the pattern of the Petrarchan sonnet, and we are starting onto the sestet of the Petrarchan sonnet. Watch it when you spell it. It's got 2 R's, Petrarchan sonnet. And this word but marks the volta or the change. Look at this very firm statement of fact. Thy eternal summer shall not fade. Your beauty will last forever. And as the reader, we're going, what? Huh? His summer, his beauty is going to be eternal. It'll never fade. It won't lose its color. And you will not lose the possession of that fair, the beauty you own. You own that beauty, you're not going to give it up. Also, you're not going to have death bragging that you wander into his shade. When a person brags, they boast. They are so pleased with themselves. And he says, death would brag because you are so beautiful. And if you wander into the shade, into the darkness of death, death would be very, very pleased. But he says, it's not going to happen. Look at the gnaw. It's not going to happen. And finally, the speaker explains why. Because you are going to grow in eternal lines to time. You are going to be eternal. You are going to be forever. And you are going to grow in the lines of poetry. So you are not going to grow old in real life. You are going to be stuck in time, in the poem. And so you will never, ever grow old. And the speaker ends very triumphantly. The tone here is triumph. I've conquered, I've won, I've succeeded. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see. So in other words, as long as there are human beings alive, because we can all breathe and see. So long lives this. This is the poem. The poem will live forever, and the poem will give life to you. These are the 2 rhyming lines. It's the rhyming couplet, and this is this joyful, triumphant ending.